Welcome back to another Micmac Tabletop review. Today we'll be taking a look at calibrating the Walther PPKS recoil spring. Here's a question for you. Will calibrating the recoil spring on this Walther PPKS pistol improve its handling and performance? And how difficult would it be? And would it be worth doing? The answer to these questions are the point behind this video. This is my Walther PPKS 380 pistol. This was my everyday carry self-defense weapon for more than a decade. I bought it back in 2009 and carried it mostly in a shoulder or cross-draw holster. It's got the touch-activated factory Crimson Trace laser grips on it, which you can't get anymore. Too bad, because these laser grips are great. Even after 15 years, the laser has maintained its zero, and these grips still work perfectly. This is a great little pistol, and I probably trained with it more than any pistol I own. But a few years back, I bought a SIG P232 SL, also with Crimson Trace grips, and that, as they say, was that. Don't get me wrong here, the Walther PPK is still a great gun, but today, well, I carry the SIG P232 because it's just smoother, more refined, and has a better feel to me than the PPK. So my PPKS has become my in-reserve carry gun. If anything should go wrong with the P232, I can always go back to this PPK. So a few months ago, after a couple of years of storage, I decided it was time to take this PPKS out to the range again. And I immediately noted that compared to my SIG P232, the PPK felt much harsher than I remembered. And I wasn't as accurate with this Walther as I remember either. Performance-wise, they had been about the same for me, but not now. Both are 380 guns, but I don't recall them being this different to shoot. Actually, I was a little surprised by the notable difference. Then it occurred to me, this PPK is 15 years old, and during that time I probably run at least 3,000 to 4,000 rounds through it. As a carry gun, this PPK may just be ready for a new recoil spring. Of course, replacing a recoil spring isn't a big deal, and it's common to do as guns age. But here's the thing, it also provides the opportunity to actually improve a gun's performance. And as I said, that's the purpose behind this video. But before we go any further, let's make sure this gun is cleared first. By the way, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. A new Walther PPKS sells for what many believe to be an outrageous price of around $900 today. No doubt it's a premium gun. And the production of the original Walther Model PP began back in 1929, with the shorter barrel PPK following a couple of years later. And the slightly modified sporting model PPKS was produced during the later 1960s to meet the U.S. import requirements. So this basic design has been around for a long time, and the PPK remains one of the most popular handguns of all times. Except for arguably the 1911, no other handgun has had that level of staying power. And the same can be said about how many times the Walther PP or PPK has been copied. You've got to appreciate that. Given its cost, you'd think its recoil spring would never wear out, but sadly they do. Fortunately, due to its popularity, replacement springs for the Walther PPKS are readily available from a number of sources like Brownsnell, Optic Planet, Midway USA, and Wolf Gun Springs. The factory standard 20-pound spring will usually cost you less than $8, so it's a cheap fix. You can even get an extra strength 24-pound recoil spring if you choose. But because I've always thought that the slide was a little stiff to rack on this gun, I was interested in trying out some lighter springs. The good news is that Wolf Gun Springs has a PPKS recoil spring calibration pack for about $25. It includes 4 lighter recoil springs from 17 pound to 14 pounds, as well as 3 extra power firing pin springs. Guns are typically outfitted from the factory with the optimum weight springs for the best overall performance, but you can increase or decrease recoil spring weights to fit your needs beyond the standard settings. I've already done this with several others on my pistols, including the SIG P232SL, when I decided to carry it over the PPK. So I know a heavier or lighter strength recoil spring can make a difference in comfort as well as performance. Overall, your gun's recoil spring can affect the gun's functional reliability, the sharpness of the recoil, muzzle rise, and therefore your accuracy. How so, you might ask? Well, to be specific, be aware that if a recoil spring is too strong, the gun is likely to feel too snappy, causing the muzzle to dip down after each shot, affecting target reacquisition. In an extreme case, the slide may not travel back as far as it needs to reload itself, leading to failures to feed. But lighter is not always better. Let's say the spring load is too weak. Then the gun could now feel snappy coming back, also making it harder to track the sights and recoil. In an extreme case, the slide would lack the force needed for it to return all the way or feed a new round, leading to jams. What we want is a nice balance, and that's where a recoil calibration pack comes in handy, allowing you to test out different strength weights, and that's where the Wolf Gun Spring Calibration Pack with its 4 lighter recoil springs from 17 pounds to 14 pounds will help us find the right recoil spring weight for our needs using the ammo we intend to carry. So even though I may no longer carry this firearm, I think it would be prudent to make sure it still functions at an optimal level of performance. You never know when I might need to return it to service. Now the question is, which of these replacement recoil springs will provide the best results? Here we are with the Wolf Gun Spring Calibration Pack. As you can see, we have 4 recoil springs. Very nice. And we have 3 extra power firing pin springs. I'm going to set the firing pin springs aside. They're nice to have, but I won't be using them during this trial. And here's something I learned when testing different spring strengths on other guns. It's best to mark the springs as you remove them from their packages. It's better than trying to figure out which is which later. Trust me on this. So I've marked these springs with a little dab of paint. 1 dot for the 17-pound spring, on down to 4 dots for the 14-pound spring. Replacing the recoil spring on my Walther PPK is easy. Just remove the magazine, pull down on the trigger guard, pull the slide all the way back, and lift up while allowing the slide to come back forward and off the frame. You can now remove the recoil spring from the barrel. The replacement spring goes onto the barrel with the smaller end first. Then you can return the slide to the barrel and frame. Release the trigger guard, return the magazine, and that's it. Although you can try racking the slide using different recoil spring strengths, that won't really tell you that much. Not that racking comfort isn't important, but so is felt recoil with live fire, and the gun needs to function without flaw, and you need to be able to consistently hit what you're aiming at. The only practical way that I know to find this out is to install the spring and try it out at a range. So that's what we're going to do here. And to tell the truth, I can't really tell that much difference in slide pull between these springs one after the other. Between the 17-pound and 14-pound springs, especially with the hammer cocked, yes, but overall the differences don't feel that much dissimilar. First, I believe it's important to conduct this trial with ammo I intend to carry. When carrying this gun, it's typically loaded with Hornady critical defense rounds, so that's what we'll be using for our test. Second, I usually train with targets set out to 18, 25, and 35 feet, which I think are pretty good training distances for everyday carry pistols, especially for the PPK. I'll usually start out at 18 feet and move targets out to 25 and 35 feet when training, but I think 18 feet will be fine for these initial trials. The targets are 6 inches in diameter. Also, I train with the laser off, so I'll do that here. Third, each trial will consist of 2 full magazines of 7 rounds for each spring strength. We have 4 spring weights, so there are 4 targets, and there will be 14 rounds shot at each target, so a total of 56 rounds will be fired. The first magazine will be fired at my leisure for maximum accuracy. For the second magazine, I'll be using what I call controlled rapid fire. We'll be looking at accuracy and spread as usual, but the question is, will there be any noticeable difference? And I'll make notes of any felt recoil differences. Again, are there any notable differences? Fourth, I'm going to start with the heaviest spring first as recommended by the manufacturer and move on down to weaker springs one at a time. Since the factory standard recoil spring was 20 pounds, starting with the strongest replacement spring of 17 pounds still represents a much lighter spring. Okay, starting with the 17-pound spring, let's see how it performs. After shooting this gun with its old recoil spring, will this new 17-pound spring give this gun a better feel and performance? Now that's the PPK I remember. Pretty good feel. All my shots are well centered around the bullseye. Not as tight a pattern as I'd like to see, but really not bad. Next we'll try the 16-pound spring. Sorry about that, I forgot to turn the cameras on, but you can see the tight cluster upper left of the bullseye, and the rest were under rapid fire. Very good. Better than a 17-pound spring. I couldn't tell much difference in feel though. Let's see what I can do with the 15-pound spring. Well, obviously that's not better. I can't tell any real difference in felt recoil or anything else, but the target results are pretty clear. Finally, let's try the 14-pound spring. This is the lightest spring. I'm not expecting much here given the results of the 15-pound spring, but you never know. Well, that seems to be more of the same, but I can tell you that the gun just doesn't feel right. I do notice it now. Okay, it seems that I got the best results with the 16-pound spring, which is 4 pounds lighter than the factory 20-pound recoil spring, and the gun felt good with that spring. Here we are with the 4 target results. There are differences, but those differences aren't that dramatic at 18 feet. If you look at the upper right target, you see the tight cluster from the first magazine, but compared to the other targets, even the rapid fire hits seem tighter overall. Of course, this is the 16-pound recoil spring target at 18 feet. But let's test that out by returning to the 16-pound recoil spring again, and I want to check out the gun's feel with the 16-pound spring again. These felt differences are slight, so I need to check the feel out again, just to be sure. Okay, well that's it. Look at that centering. I'm happy with that, and the gun feels good. Actually a little better than I remember. Racking is noticeably easier, and the felt recoil is very good. I'm not only happy with these results, I'm actually pretty impressed as well. This is such a really nice pistol. It not only feels good, its function and accuracy are very good as well. Of course, I need to go back and forth a little between the 17, 16, and 15-pound springs a bit more to be sure, but the 16-pound spring appears to be the better one so far. Back to the PPKS. While the felt differences between the 4 recoil springs were slight, the 17-pound and 16-pound seemed to feel the best in use, and it was obvious my accuracy was notably better with the 16-pound spring. And given the 16-pound recoil spring is 4 pounds lighter than the factory recoil spring, there's the benefit of lighter slide racking as well. Now before we end today's video, I'd like to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe down below. And thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video useful. To wrap up, I could have just ordered a replacement recoil spring for this PPKS and been done with it, and there's no doubt it certainly would have cost me less. Of course, if I'd done that, I wouldn't have learned what I know now, and the potential improvement of this very nice PPK would never have been fully realized. So what do I think? Do I think it was worth it? Oh yes, and I'd do it all over again. As an upgrade, this is an inexpensive solution you can do yourself, and the results might surprise you. In my case, this Walther PPKS has not only been restored to its former performance level, it actually feels and performs even better. Now keep in mind that just because I had the best results with a 16-pound spring, that may not be what works best for you. The fact is, you won't know until you try the different springs out on your own personal gun and with the ammo you intend to carry. As a follow-up to this recoil spring calibration project, I've gone back to the range a couple more times and repeated the trial of the 17, 16, and 15-pound recoil springs with basically the same results. Even at 25 and 35 feet, the differences are not dramatic between the 17 and 16-pound spring, but they remain consistent with the best feel and performance awarded to the 16-pound spring. Again, I hope you found this review to be useful, and remember, any weapon you carry is better than the one you left at home. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll be back for my next tabletop review. Until next time, stay safe.